Mbira is a very fascinating instrument, and I think that is one of the few examples of a system or body of knowledge that's almost very culture specific, both in terms of content, in terms of know-how. And I think that it could be a very, very powerful tool for education, in terms of teaching music, teaching cultural awareness, and also destigmatizing African culture. I also believe that every culture has got things that are unique to it, and that is the duty of that culture to fully exploit them, investigate them, integrate them into their intellectual and cultural life. And I'm particularly fascinated by the fact that the world's expertise in Mbira basically originates from Zimbabwe. And therefore I think that Zimbabwe should be respectful of this uniqueness and should actually invest in developing it and using it as part of its stamp on the cultural map. This is it used to be a gallery, but now it's more, we've run out of space because we're growing faster than we anticipated. And now it's become more of a storeroom. I'm basically a filmmaker by training. I've been doing Mbira for about 20 years now. Part of that was that I found Mbira very engaging, and I also felt that really I could easily transfer my filmmaking skills to Mbira. And in fact, to me, on an emotional level, there's not much difference between making films and making this kind of project. And in fact, over the years, the two have sort of overlapped in many ways. I've either made films about Mbira or moved on to make other films, and still been able to engage with the Mbira activity. Over the years, I've collaborated with different musical genres. And one of the things that always came about was that the traditional Mbira has a fixed scale, which is, has some limitations in the sense that some songs you can play on Mbira, but you can't transpose them unless you tune the Mbira to a particular scale for that particular song. Over the years, I always wanted to have an instrument that could actually basically have the same latitude in what it's able to do as many other instruments. I noticed, for example, when we did collaborations, that it was easy for a string instrument to collaborate with Mbira, or a wind instrument. But if you were doing keyboard and piano, for example, you'd have to respect the tuning system on the piano or keyboard. And then over the years, I mean, like some years back, I went to Indonesia. And there they play gamelan. And I spent a few years studying gamelan. I took several trips to there. And I found that a lot of the issues of tuning and everything were the same as in Zimbabwe. The only remarkable difference was that the Indonesians, I think since the 40s, had decided to formally investigate their traditional music and traditional instruments. And as a result, they have many world-renowned colleges and universities that are dedicated to traditional practice. And through that exploration, I decided that the Mbira could not only be seen as a cultural artifact that was, if you like, kind of locked in a time frame, where like you can't change the Mbira, you can't do new Mbiras, you can't develop Mbiras. And so I was always interested in seeing what other kind of Mbiras you could make. I grew up on a lot of rock music and pop music, like any other sort of urban kid. And I found that there were songs that I could play on Mbira, popular songs like pop songs or rock songs or jazz songs. Some worked, some didn't, some I had to play in a different key, but I wanted a Mbira that could play the songs in the same way that you could play. And then one day in a discussion with a friend of mine, he challenged me to produce a Mbira that could play the national anthem in the way it is scored. Now this was a very interesting challenge because the Zimbabwe National Anthem is notated using a Western scale. And so when we tried to play the national anthem with a normal traditional Mbira in whatever key, we could approximate the national anthem, but we couldn't reproduce it adequately. And this challenge had a date to it, which was that the bet was that I had to play it by the 8th or 9th of May or something. And fortunately, the challenge was issued, I think, at least 6 months before. So we started to make prototypes of different kind of instruments to see what could work. And in the end, naturally, it became clear that to play this music, we had to have a Mbira that had a chromatic scale. We made a Mbira of the same principle, and what was interesting is that when we finished the instruments, the craftsmen that I was working with, who are very proficient Mbira players, generally could only play the traditional songs that they played. And I realized that this was because they didn't understand, if you like, the Western musical principles of how this scale works. And so what I did is I went to a friend of mine who's a keyboard and piano player, and I gave him one of these things, and I asked him to produce a score of any music and try to play with it. And after explaining the layout of the key, I was amazed that he could actually play just about anything he wanted. Initially, most people sort of said, why do you need to change the Mbira? You know, it's our traditional instrument, it's been like this for 100 years, and my attitude is nothing's ever stayed the same. Things have changed. Things have to change. If you don't change them yourself, somebody will change them for you. Realized that I couldn't use the traditional Mbira ensemble, so I went to the police band because we'd done some other projects with them in the past, because their musicians are formally trained and they're very, very experienced because they have to perform regularly. And in fact, one of the things they have to do is learn, usually at very short notice, the national anthem of any visiting dignitary. And so they're very versatile. And so I gave them these Mbiras, and I think within the first afternoon they could play the national anthem. The only thing that was outstanding, which they had to work at, was the playing technique, because it couldn't be played like a traditional Mbira and the fingering was very different. So I want to do 13 instruments. What is the 2? Is the 4? Is the 4? That's 8, 10. 10, 11. Then play some of my. And then I was thinking to use one voice and cut. Okay. Then it's clean until I just. Yes, like boy. Okay. Boy. I think that the development of the Chromatic Mbira is very interesting, and I think it's got huge potential for music education in this country, because I think that With the Chromatic Mbira, kids can learn universal music theory on a traditional instrument. And after they have the universal theory, they can translate their knowledge of the music curriculum that they have in the schools. They can learn that and then be able to transpose the skills onto playing a traditional instrument. I don't think that one takes from the other. I think it just enriches the students' musical experience. Non-Western cultures have always been articulated from the point of view of ethnomusicologists or anthropologists. And this body of literature has become the way that non-Western societies are defined, and in some cases that non-Western societies begin to understand themselves. I think it would be a very odd thing, for example, if all of Western music or Western culture or Western history was written in the eyes of Africa. I think that instead of Africans defining themselves from being the objects of study, they must create the studies of what they should be studied about from their own intellectual effort.
Anthem you can play 24 instruments.
Okay.
They play different parts. 24. Of which the 24 they are going to from 4 basic parts, soprano on to tenor bass.
Okay.
Otherwise, zimwe zvinenge zvakungoita kuti zvingove neharmony yakakora. So fanira kuti pane pati yanzi ndeye-second. Taona yakatsangana. Anonzi mamanotsa yatanga ya. Yes, trumpet part. Ukumanja yaya party second, yeah. Ubuji akuti ngende moyo yedu kam. Yende ngati yafa ngati na 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 na.
Our self-awareness is changing, and there's a realization that some of what we have is very useful and is very good and can be used to make Zimbabwe a better place. Also, if you look at this whole question of indigenization, self-pride, national identity, and everything, I think that it becomes inevitable that the country addresses its own cultural heritage and finds out a way of getting this integrated into national development. I have no doubt that traditional knowledge will play a greater role in the development of Africa. I think the question is really how fast and when.